It's Wednesday, July 3rd. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, telling stories of Newfoundland and Labrador and bringing them to the big screen and the flat screen. How does that happen? What does it take to go from book form to be optioned? That's the conversation for today, so sit tight. And it can be quite the thing, right, to watch a story come into our collective consciousness. On the big global scale, sometimes book form to TV or film, so, you might think like Game of Thrones or something like that. Locally, in my mind, I tend to go to rare birds. And that's where we're staying today, on the local level for stories. But their reach, no limits. They can go anywhere. In this case, for today's conversation, it's a series many of you have already heard about. Best-selling author Helen C. Escott's 5-book Operation series, published by Flanker Press, has been optioned by Rink Rat Productions for film and television. So we're about to talk about that and what it takes for something like that to happen and the process around it. In the meantime, here's some questions for you. What are the best representations of stories from this province in film and television? Right, I mentioned one, Rare Birds. What do you think? What one really stands out for you, or what ones? And which stories would you like to see adapted? It could be fiction. It could be a real-life story, too. Let us know. The numbers to call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. No shortage ways to get in touch with us here. Helen Escott, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. I love to talk about stories.
Yeah, so it's the 5-book Operation series and other books, and I've got another one here in my hand, actually. And Mary Sexton joins us as well, president of Rink Rat Productions, filmmaker, producer. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Is it summer outside, or is it still not?
Well, I'm wearing shorts. I'm pretending.
Summer is a state of mind.
That's right.
There you go. Before we get into everything we're talking about, Helen, what am I holding here?
So We Will Meet Again is the latest novel. It has everything Newfoundland loves. There's Nan, there's Jesus, and there's Elvis. That's the holy trinity for Newfoundland.
It's true.
It's absolutely true.
That's amazing. And yes, very, very true. So that's what's in it. When's the launch for this?
It's this Saturday at Chapters on Kenmont Road from 1 to 3. Everybody can drop by and see me. And then Sunday I'm over at Coles in the Avalon Mall from 2 to 3:30 signing books.
Excellent. We'll dip back into this a little bit later in the show. Looks fantastic and very, very timely.
Yes, just by accident. It happened with the internment of the unknown soldier. And I was in Boeing Park one day walking my dog and stopped by the Fighting Newfoundlander, and I always do because my father served in the British Royal Navy in World War II. So I always stopped there, and I was thinking to myself, where's the monument to the women who were here keeping the home fires burning? Where's that monument? So this book is the monument I created to those women who kept the home fires burning.
So it's Helen C. Escott, We Will Meet Again, a novel. It is out now by Flanker Press, so it looks great. Here's a question for both of you. How does something, Mary, I'll go with you. How does something get optioned? Like when we say, press release comes out, such and such a thing has been optioned for TV and film. What does that mean?
Well, basically, you read the story and you think about it. I have known Helen for a very long time, and she's a prolific writer. And I read the books, and I went, this would make a great TV series. So then we got in touch with each other, and then the publisher, and set up an option agreement. I had just done one recently with Anne Budgell on her book, so I kind of had a format for it. And now that I've sort of stepped away from doing location work and I'm back into doing producing work, I said to Helen, this would be a perfect opportunity for us to work together. So you take the time, you do the option on it, and then you do get a script writer to write with Helen so that we can actually get a production script, and then you put it into development, then you put it into production, and then you screen it.
So it takes a few weeks?
Yeah, minutes. Oh, if it only could be that easy.
What's the timeline for some of these? And I know it varies, right? It all depends on what strikes and what doesn't and everything else.
Well, I look at Maudie. Maudie took 12 years, but what we got out of it at the end of the game was brilliant.
Yeah.
Skeet that I'm working with my son on, that took 8 years. I optioned Ann Budgell's book, Dear Everybody, I think 5, maybe 6 years ago, and we're still working because we need to get a director, and then the director gets the cast, and then the cast actually stimulates the financing to get it into production.
Ann Budgell, former host of this show, fantastic person, great broadcaster and writer. All right. Then, Helen, give us a reminder of your series.
Well, it's the Operation series. It all deals, each book deals with a different crime, but it's the same characters all the way through. But it's in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a character in the book. When you're reading it, like I've had so many readers contact me to say, I can't believe I grew up in this neighborhood and I never knew these buildings were there and what they meant. And they'd go in and go, oh my goodness, I've never seen this before. Although I've, probably went to this church my whole life, I never knew that these statues were there and what they meant. So it kind of brings the whole province to life. And I'm a very colorful writer. When I bring you into a room, I want you to know what it sounds like, what it smells like, what it feels like, is it fear? Is it happiness? What is it you're going to feel when you walk into a room? And I like to portray that. So it's the same when if I'm bringing you into the Basilica or the Masonic Temple or somewhere else in Newfoundland, I want you to see it. I want you to smell it. I want you to absolutely have that movie in your head.
Yeah, so it's full experience.
Yeah, that's the way I like to write. And I like my characters to be real. And all my characters are based on real people, which, their names are very similar to the names of the people. And I make them, and I study those people. Like, I need to know, is his gray hair long? Is it prickly? Is it bald on the back? I need to know everything about that person, and I try to describe them, to make them seem very real. But I also like my characters to be flawed, too.
Yeah,
right? They're not perfect. They're not RoboCops. They all have problems.
That makes folks real, right? Because we're all flawed, right? No,
and they're mostly humanitarians. They're human.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're police officers. I mean, the two main police officers in the book, Staff Sergeant Myra and Corporal McNaughton, they're flawed characters. And McNaughton has a mother with dementia that she has to deal with. And Myra has PTSD and a broken marriage, and so. It's real that these police officers who go to work every day trying to do the best they can to bring closure to families and, in these crimes or to solve these crimes and put, bad guys behind bars, they go home to families and bring that home with them, and it affects their lives. So in the books, it's very real. You see the whole life of the police officers, not just work. They do take it home. I mean, my husband was a police officer with the RNC, and I was a civilian member with the RCMP. And, I remember Christmas Day, my husband, who was at a fatal accident on the highway all day, comes home and carves the turkey, and, to have Christmas, and after leaving a scene of a fatal.
Wow.
And that's just the life of a police officer.
Yeah.
That's people say, well, it's what they signed up for, but did they really?
No, you don't. Yeah. It's same with from the police. Frontline workers, from the police to paramedics, folks in the military. Like, just because you see it on television, you read about it, until you're there, you're not going to know. Yeah.
No. Right? And that's why the books are so gritty. And that's why I liked Mary's vision of it, because she was saying, we do it in the fall, not the summer, because this is not it's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's a fall show. I could see the fog and the rain and the snow. And
giving it some grit, right?
It's more of a CSI.
It's not sunny, although it could be done in June here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, this June. For sure.
Yeah.
But it's more like a CSI. Like, I see it more dark and gritty, and that's what I liked about Mary's vision. She had this vision for it, and I went, oh, my God, that's exactly what I see.
Yeah, I mean, like the seriousness of it just bringing me to Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman movie 7, where it rained the whole time. Like, it's important. The surroundings are important for telling stories, right? You're not. This isn't. It won't be Republic of Doyle with the sunshine shots. It's no. We want this is serious. There's grit to it. So let's film it appropriately and accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking about human trafficking and child abuse and missing and murdered women. It's not a comedy, and it's another side of Newfoundland that you're going to see, but it's an important side. It's part of our history. We have two great police forces here with the RCMP and the RNC, and they do an amazing work. I mean, I've never met a police officer who didn't come to work wanting to make a difference. And that's the whole point of it. And so the books portray that. And I think one of the biggest compliments I get is from police officers who say to me, I read that book, and that's a great investigation. That was well done. Didn't know who it was till the end. Yeah. And I said, that's good, because I never know who did it till the end either.
But your research, you do an awful lot of research.
I do.
You can tell it because it rings true.
Oh, thank you. And I search out a lot of experts too, right? Like I look for the experts and interview a lot of police officers and try to get that real story. And I also don't put myself in the characters. I let the characters be themselves. I don't put my beliefs and values into each character. They all have their own lives.
Yeah, they're all wired differently in the way they're just, and you're writing it, but it's not you. You're creating.
Yeah, exactly.
Other people. For both of you, what have you kind of learned differently about life for what you're doing, right? So, like, for example, I find when I took over radio hosting, I've told people before, I had to kind of learn how to talk again in a way, because talking and the way I would talk to people in normal conversations just was really different. So it was something I would learn. I learned a lot about listening. So for you, an observation, what have you learned over the years of writing? Because like when you talk about the Masonic Temple, or you talk about the Basilica, or you talk about details of people, all of that is like heightened attention to detail. Was that always there, or is that something that came over time when you were as you were writing?
I think I always had a natural curiosity, because my first career was in media, to ask the questions. And then when I joined the RCMP as their communications and media relations person, I found I'm asking the same questions. We're asking the same questions, just doing different things with the answers. That's all. And so it was very similar careers. And then I kind of had this master class of watching investigators in our major crime unit and how analytical they were, and how they would take a small piece of information and just drill down and drill down and drill down until they had the answer, and not put your own ideas into it. Like you don't have an answer that you're trying to go towards. You're just following the information or following the money to see where it goes. And that, watching that over the years, that really interested me. So like doing research was exactly what I was doing in the RCMP. I'm always doing research. And so that came natural. So, and I think then I could see the story start to bloom by doing that, just by being around these experts and studying what they were doing. And I think one of the biggest traits that I learned from the RCMP is surveillance. Just to sit down and watch, just to watch. I could be sitting in I was at a funeral the other day, and I'm sitting there, and my husband's like, "What are you doing on the phone? You need to put your phone up." And I'm describing this woman in the second row. So just like, stop. I need to say exactly like what she's wearing, what her hair was like, and her earrings and her makeup. And I'm doing it because I could see her in a book somewhere, and I'm basically doing surveillance on this woman, and I'm watching how she talks and how she's moving, and he's like, "Put the phone away." And I was like, "No, I really need this. You're
profiling.
Yeah,
so folks,
constantly.
If you see Helen Escott out and about, and Helen Escott is using her phone, and it looks like she's texting, no, she's probably describing you.
Yeah, she's probably going to end up with a book somewhere. I'm sure Mary does the exact same thing.
So this is what I was going to ask. Like, Mary, talk like about yourself and your own role, and your green light and stuff. You're producing stuff that is part of the cultural fabric here. So what have you learned through that? Like, well, how's that kind of changed you for observation over the years?
Well, I'm a total people watcher as well. I've been that way since I've been a small child. My curiosity, like Helen said, it's curiosity. I've had to learn patience because things don't happen as quickly. We're very fortunate here in Newfoundland. We do have Bringing N.L, and prior to that it was Newfoundland Film Development Corporation, and we do have people that support the arts here. So, but it's getting it, something to be championed, and getting it to the right people, and getting the right people involved, and the right crew, the right cast. So I've had to learn patience, and as my mother would say, Mary, don't let your mind wander. It's too little to be out on its own. But I would constantly be just rethinking who would play that role? Who will do this? Who's that? Who's going to, even down to the minutia of who's going to do craft? Who's going to be the DOP? Who's going to, and my brother once said that if it's not written, we can't fix it. And it's true. You can't throw money at something if it's not written properly in the first place.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you can do all those explosions, you can, have, a star performing it, but yet if it's not written, it doesn't ring true and it doesn't resonate.
Yeah, no, the writing has to be there. From books then to TV and film, what's the bridge process like for getting something from a novel to a screenplay?
Well, you need a
Someone
screenwriter
who knows how to do it. Yeah.
You need a screenwriter that will take the story and the complexity of the story and make sure the story. Sometimes we may even change a genre or change the gender. It could be a male in the book, but it becomes a female because we've got too many men films, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, of course.
A lot of white male films. But so it's about getting the writer of the book to be able to work with the screenwriter. This is what we're doing with Helen's. We have Ed Rich working on it, and Ed and Helen have done a lookbook, and now I'll bring it to market when the festivals start in September, and hopefully, knock on wood, we get some interest and make it happen.
How have chats with Ed been so far?
Oh, fantastic. You know what? I just finished reading Rare Birds, and I read it years ago when it first came out, and I saw the movie. And then when I knew I'd be working with Ed, I went out and I got it again, and I read it again. And it's still so funny. Yeah. And I'm laughing out loud at my husband saying, "What are you reading?" I said, I can't explain it. You're going to have to read the book. It's so funny, and he's so real in this book. And I happened to run into Andy Jones one day down at the hotel, and I couldn't even talk to him because I was laughing so much.
Well, Fonz stole the show, right? William Hurt did a brilliant job, but he basically just laid all the fabric for Fonz.
Yeah. That was 2001, right? For
I
the
know.
movie, because I remember watching that just as it came out or whatever, and loving it back then, and just kind of it's always stayed with me. So it's so great that you're working with Ed Rich. So like you have that success from then, and someone who's so talented himself, plus to mix with all of your writing and your talent, and like that sounds great.
Yeah, well, he, like when I first met him, it was like, yes, Mr. Rich, yes, I was like, oh my God, he wrote it Rare Birds. How do you sit down and talk to him about my writing? And but he's a wonderful man. He's funny and he's so incredibly talented. And I've learned in this. I mean, I know nothing about the TV or movie industry. I'm just finished, still learning about the publishing world. And so to have someone who's made that bridge, and I trust him in his process because he's so talented. So to have him write this screenplay is just, it blows my mind that someone so good will take it on. That to me, that's just a sign from the universe that it's coming, girl.
Well, and as well, he did Secret Nation with our late Paul Pope as well. Yeah. So, Ed, you should read Secret Nation, because Secret Nation came out at a time when we were we were infants in this industry. We were just, we had been doing some work, but, feature films, we were basically getting $1 million for a feature film. A feature film in the U.S., $1 million is basically paid on coffee. Or paper. So those advanced so much in this industry, and we've been, as I mentioned earlier, we've been fortunate because, the people that have come before me and will come after me, they've been able to grow the industry the way we are today.
Yeah, so how are things today then? Like you talk about grow the industry the way we are today. How are things today? Because to sit down here and have this conversation, to hear about a book series optioned by an author I've interviewed a bunch, everyone knows Helen's books. To hear that, it's fantastic.
Well, we got 3 series going.
Yeah.
And we have a couple of feature films going, and we're not just a seasonal industry anymore. We're full time, and we're expanding daily.
And is there, because Mary Walsh was on a little while ago, and Mary mentioned a bit of sometimes she's worried we won't see some of the talent from years before that got to kind of get uplifted now because there's more actors from away coming in for some of these things, and it's not so much of a nurturing of local talent that would happen in previous years.
I agree with Mary on that, but I also think that talent will rise. Talent will always rise, and I believe that we some of these projects are service productions. They're not local productions.
Yeah.
Alan's doing the St. Pierre. That's a local production. Son of Critch is Mark, but it's paired with an Ontario producer, and Hudson and Rex is basically a service production out of Ontario. But Sherry White's doing a feature film here. We have Reacher, filming here. We're constantly. I have a couple of low budget features in the works right now myself. I got a couple of service productions. So we're all working. Like I think that we're in. We used to be at a point where we only had. Paul and I would talk about it. We'd basically take your pulse to see if you could work in the film industry, see if you had that A personality, and you were driven by coffee, not much else. But we now probably have perhaps 2 crews, but we were at a half crew, and we would always have to supplement it.
Right.
So I think with the school now and what we're doing with the, people are actually taking this on. It's a business.
Yeah.
It's not a hobby. It's a business. And I think that people are taking it serious, and I think the younger and up-and-coming producers, production managers, DOPs, they're taking it serious, and they want to work full-time in this industry. And it is a business, and it's an industry.
So then if we go back 20, 30 years ago for Mary Sexton in the industry back then, what would younger you think about where things are at now for what you're doing?
Well, I'd be a little flabbergasted, to be perfectly honest with you. I kind of, I wanted to run a vintage clothing store or a restaurant.
You still can, right? That's still there for you if you want
I can go back to it. I still have a closet of clothes that I'm sure people
people want to buy your clothes.
That's what we'll do when we retire. We'll open a vintage clothing store between us.
I'm very excited because they're doing these 5. I'm working with Nick on another project. We constantly say we'll never work together again, then we work together again, and we say we'll never do it again. We do it 10 times fold. I'm excited about the young and up-and-coming talent. I think that, we're bringing in a lot of actors and stuff, but I do think that we, the craft and the crews that we are creating and nurturing have come tenfold.
You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about Newfoundland and Labrador stories and moving them from being stories in books, stories that get told, to the big screen, to the flat screen. And my questions for you, what are the best representations of stories from this province in film and television? Which stories would you like to see be adapted? It can be from real life or it can be from fiction. If you want to join the conversation, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206, or email thesignal@cbc.ca. Here with me in studio, we have Helen Escott, author of the 5-book Operation series, among other books, and Mary Sexton, president of Rink Rat Productions, filmmaker and producer. a Newfoundland story, a Newfoundland and Labrador story, how has that been evolving over the years, do you think, for what makes a story from this province? And there's that, obviously, that difference too, right? The Labrador story, the Newfoundland story, then both together as a province. What do you both think?
You know, I remember when I was in high school, we had to read Death on the Ice. And that story impacted me because I didn't learn this history in school. I didn't know. Like I know the government just made it mandatory that all students now learn Newfoundland history, and I'm interested to see what that is. And but it was the first time I knew about the sealing industry in Newfoundland. I never learned that in school anywhere. And it impacted me, and it made me realize that, you know, I'm a proud Newfoundlander, but I don't know my history. And so I started reading more Newfoundland books, and now I read a lot of Newfoundland books. And we are natural storytellers. There's something in the water of Newfoundland that makes us all creative. There's everybody here can tell a story, tell a joke, sing, dance, play an instrument. You know, we all do something. Every family has that jokester, the serious. You know, you always have these people in your family, and then wherever you go in this province, there's somebody who can tell you a story, no matter how old they are. They're, you know, I've seen people in their 90s get up and tell the most interesting story.
Yeah.
I've seen 12-year-olds get up and act out the most interesting story. I think we all have that story. There's just something about us to be natural storytellers. We are also a province of wanting to read our own story. And I know when I'm out signing books, you know, I've seen people at Costco when I'm there signing books, and they're going by with, you know, pulling two carts, one in front and one on back, and they'll look at me and go, "Is that a Newfoundland book?" And I'll say, "Yes, throw it in." I said, "Do you want to know what it's about? Don't care. Throw it in." Throw it in. Throw it on top. And you know, it's the same. If I'm at Coles or Chapters and somebody walk by and go, "Oh, is that a Newfoundland book? Oh, give that to me. My father reads. My mother reads it, or you know, I'll read it." But we want to know our stories. And I talk to other authors in other provinces who don't get that. They don't get that culture.
I was in my early 20s, and I really, really enjoyed Wayne Johnston's The Colony of Unrequited Dreams, right? So I read that, loved it, and it was making its rounds out there in the ether or whatever. Downtown one day, I run into this a couple from Australia, and the whole reason they came to Newfoundland, came to St. John's, was because of that book. And so this is a lesson in my early 20s, which is a while ago now. It was just kind of like the power of storytelling for folks to be like, wait, I want to go there and see what that culture is about.
They wanted to meet Irving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a fashionista.
So it was, and I was like, Australia, like not, you know, it's not like they came from Maine or like, you know, Buffalo or something. It was like all the way from Australia, just because of not say just because of a book, but yeah, just because of a book. You read a book to go visit a place. Fascinating.
Yeah. I think Mary might be able to expand on that.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Well, no, you know, a story is a story, but, you know, Newfoundlanders, we tell stories the best. You know, seriously. You know, you can be with a mainlander and you're sort of like, get to the point.
Slow talkers, see?
Slow talkers. We love to, a recitation, like Helen was saying, like, you know, my mother could spin a yarn and never let the truth get in the way of a good story kind of way, because that's, you know, we're very oral. We had an oral history. We didn't actually have a great deal of books about us. And I think now, like when you look at Michael Crummy, you look at Ed Rich, you look at Anne Budge, like we're interested. We look at Helen. We want to get more. You know, we get an appetite for it.
Speaking of storytellers, Ruth Lawrence is on the line. So director, writer, actor, and director of Party Pirate. Ruth, how you doing?
Hi, Adam. Great to hear you guys have this conversation today.
Thanks for coming on the show. I saw you post online about some screenings of Party Pirate. So, when are those happening so folks can know?
Yeah, we've got a full tour that we're going to go across the island. The first two screenings are in St. John's this weekend. Friday and Saturday at the LSPU Hall. And then we go on the road to Manuel's Small Point Broad Cove, and all the way out to Corner Brook. We're going down to English Harbour West, Clarenville, all points in between. We're doing 10 screenings across the province in July.
Amazing. Remind folks about the storyline, and then I'm going to ask you how it was created.
Yeah, so the storyline really is based on a true story written by Luke Lawrence and drawn from his experiences being dyslexic and having several other learning disabilities and how that affected his life and how he coped with them. So it is a comedy. He's a comedian, but it really does take a story that a lot of people, especially with learning disabilities or those who are connected to them, related to them, and makes it, a little bit more relatable, I think, in terms of like how life actually is different for people who are coping with some of those extra challenges. And yeah, it is a comedy. It's super fun. It's a great summer movie to get out, have a few laughs with your friends, and then, have an early night of it and go out and maybe share your own stories, which, as your in-studio guests are talking about now, Newfoundlanders love to do.
The process of writing the screenplay for this, like, you're working with your son Luke, and you talked about folks, how it can be inspirational for folks with learning disabilities. Can you tell us a bit about that process and how that worked? Because I've always found that part of the story so interesting and speaks to, I think, a lot of people. Yeah, so of course the fact that he's dyslexic and has other learning disabilities, like he's also got some dysgraphia. So the process of writing was very different for him. It was not sitting down at a computer and typing it out. He had a scribe for most of it. I did some of the scribing. He also hired other people to scribe for him at the time. And by that, I mean type as he talked. Yeah. Then we'd read it back, and he'd also use an app that would read through it for him so he could hear what he'd written, change it, do that kind of thing. Obviously, he had story editors that also helped him sort of clarify what he was going for. So, yeah, it was a really interesting process for me in particular. I'm a very literary person, like I do lots of writing, but for me it was a great insight. I mean, known Luke his whole life, but it was a great insight for me in how he works and how really it is possible, especially with technology these days, to do that kind of work. It's not off limits to you anymore to say that you're a writer if you're coping with something like dyslexia. There's a lot of technology out there to help that. So yeah, it was really interesting for me, and obviously I got way more insight into the script because of that. So I was there right from when he was writing most of the first scenes and stuff, and it really helped me in terms of directing to be able to tell that story with him. And how long did it take from conception or the idea to the writing of it to making it into an actual movie and then screening it for folks?
Oh, Lord, really long for Luke. I think he would admit he started writing that screenplay and he did PEI Writers Boot Camp. He started writing it about 6 years before he actually finished the draft. And to be honest, the reason that he finished the draft is because we were in COVID lockdown. He came home from Toronto, got stuck here, and said, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And I said, this is like the perfect time for you to write the draft of your screenplay. And he said, I'm here all alone. I said, okay, 2 hours a night I'll dedicate to typing for you. And we did it over Zoom. And within 3 weeks, I think, we had a full draft because he had most of one draft done. And then from that, he was able to take it on, get a story editor, get another scribe. But basically, the first draft, he got nailed down in that lockdown between March and April, and then moved on from that. He approached Jenny Hawley, who produced it. It was once he actually committed and got down to finishing the script, things moved relatively fast, but I'm pretty sure it was 5 or 6 years before he got to that point.
Wow. Yeah, things take time. I just want to say,
yeah, especially when he's dealing with those extra challenges.
Well, it makes like you've got a finished great product, and it makes for such an interesting story for a lot of folks to look and say, like you said, right? Like for a lot of folks, anything can be possible, right? If you're putting the work in, there's ways to get things done, and great things can come from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Ruth Lawrence, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Congratulations, Ruth. 10 screens. That's pretty impressive.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. And of course, Mary, same to you. You just finished a movie with your son, so you know where I'm coming from.
I'm afraid Nick is going to try to reopen it again.
Don't let him. Okay, thanks for having me, you guys.
All right, Ruth Lawrence there. Tell us about this project that's coming up. Well, we're not sure yet, but tell us what you can about the project that you worked on with Nick.
Oh, it's called Skeet.
Yeah.
And it's
Great word.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a comedy, which is very bizarre for Sextons not to be doing comedy. It's an unlikely friendship between a Syrian and Newfoundlander, and this Newfoundlander has addiction issues, and he gets out of Her Majesty's and goes back to his old stomping grounds, but it's not his stomping grounds anymore. It's been filled with low-rent housing that the Syrians are living.
Yeah, newcomers.
And newcomers and new Canadians and new Newfoundlanders, and how their unlikely friendship helped both of them heal and become better human beings.
And then, like you said, it's not a comedy. For the shooting of it, what's the mood? Because we were talking earlier, right? So for Helen, like for your series, it's like, we might we'd like to shoot it in the fall or something, or June. But what's the mood for this one for shooting?
Oh, just to shoot myself in the foot. We basically shot it black and white.
Amazing.
And Nick started filming this, the premise of it, because he had Sean Dalton from The Trues, and Sean Dalton plays the lead, and so he had Sean and his nephew from 8 years ago. They filmed because I find that sometimes when you're pitching a project to executives, they don't read a lot. You need to give them a sizzle reel. You need to give them something that they can visualize.
Yeah, describe a sizzle reel for folks who don't know.
Well, a sizzle reel is basically taking the tone, the premise of a project, and maybe doing one or two scenes that are pivotal to describe what the end result would be. So we did that 8 years ago, and then Nick started writing it, like Ruth was saying, the pandemic, and he really got into it. But we did, I believe, 4 shoots altogether. It was like, okay, these low-budget feature films, you shoot 18 days. I think we shot like 38 by the time it was all said and done.
Wow.
Because we got Jay to be our other character, and as we had him, Nick, the story started to morph into something bigger. And to deal with racism and addiction and all the things that we weren't dealing with, we sort of started dealing with it, and it became an amalgamation of all those thoughts. And so we shot a lot. And of course, when you shoot a lot, then you have to edit a lot, and it takes time to do all that. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm very proud of the film. I'm very proud of Nick for sticking to it. And Nick has become sober on the strength of this film, and it's quite rewarding at the end of the day. Now, will it get the world premiere that I want it to get? I hope so. But, we're always challenged. As I was saying to you, we did this film for about 1.1, maybe 1.2, but we put all our fees and everything into it. And trying to get that to compete against, our cousins to the south, when Tom Cruise is doing, got 4 theaters, blocked.
Yeah.
So that's why I was so proud of Ruth for getting 10 screens across the province.
Yeah.
That's a feat in itself.
Well, and it talks about the work that has to go into it. And,
that's
and
blood,
who you're
sweat,
up
and
against.
tears.
Right. So, Helen, for you, when you hear this, we're really, obviously lots of optimism.
We're going television. We're going television.
So, what's the difference? So, how are you feeling then about the process that's ahead of you for what you're doing? And then I'll go back to Mary about some of the TV process.
I'm very excited. And I don't know this industry, but I know one time my husband and I decided we were going to go to Florida, and we were going to just drive through Florida and check out all these little towns and places. And we were in this little town. It was like a little cowboy town, and it was, typical beach town. And there was this bus stop there with one of the shelters, and outside the shelter it was a movie poster for Maudie. And I went, stop. That's Mary Sexton's movie. I can't believe it's down in Florida. So we went to see it, and I was watching the movie, and I was thinking, how did she get a person to evolve into Maudie? This is such a hard character, and it was just so beautifully done and so raw. And I was watching and I was thinking, oh my God, she's the one. Yeah. She's the one I need. So it just so happened the universe sent her to me, and I always knew when I was writing the book, I always could hear a female voice. I always kind of thought, I could always see the TV series, and I always knew a female would be the one to produce it and bring it to the screen, because from working in policing, and nothing against male police officers, they do a great job, but females, even if you're not a police officer, females see detail. We see things in technicolor, in just living color, where men can be black and white sometimes. You could have a crime committed and you can interview, and as a reporter, you can interview a man on the scene and say, what do you look like? Well, he had a black coat on, I think, and I don't know.
You could have a dead body in my house. I would go a week without noticing it. Our place is not about cleanliness. It's about the fact that I don't notice anything. And my wife would be outside. She'd be like, there's something different about the house. And I'm like, how did you even notice?
Yeah, you could smell something different. But women could see something happening, and you'll go, what did the guy look like? Well, he had on a black coat from Moore's. He was wearing Levi jeans. He had on Nike sneakers. They were new. The new ones that are out. His hair was definitely dyed like
Blue Jays cap on.
Yeah, Blue Jays cap. Like, women see detail, and in crime, especially if you're going to bring crime to the screen, you need to bring in a living color. You need that detail, and women see that detail. And I really loved that. And when I watched Maudie, I went, "Oh my God, that's the detail. Yeah. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. That living color."
Well, it's interesting because Maudie is a Nova Scotia story, not a Newfoundland story, but we struck gold. We had Aisling Walsh. And Aisling Walsh is a director from Ireland, and her sensitivity. And, we had because Sherry had wrote the script originally, wrote the script. And we had Jean-Francois Poulet, who was going to Seducing Dr. Lewis. He was part of that. And he really wanted Rachel McAdams. And Rachel is a fabulous actress, great rom-com actress, but, she was never going to get dirty. And then he sort of thought Jennifer Aniston, and I was like, what? No, that's never. And Aisling came on board, and the first person she wrote down, because she had worked with Sally Hawkins, and she goes, Sally Hawkins. The stature. Now, it was interesting because Nick even said to me, he said, what about Lady Gaga?
Yeah.
And this was well before A Star is Born. Yeah. And Lady Gaga could actually probably play Maud Lewis, but Sally Hawkins took it on, and she's one of those method actors. She never came out of character.
Wow.
And she roamed the streets of St. John's. Nobody bothered her. She was going up to Sobeys. She was downtown at the Rocket. She was here. She was there. Nobody even knew her.
Yeah.
And she loved it because she could be, anonymous. Nobody was paying attention to her. But when the camera would be on her, she became Maud Lewis.
I find that funny. Sally Hawkins can walk around and no one really knows her, but then if you're walking around and people would know, it's just like you
they keep calling me Mary Walsh.
Oh,
and
I went
that's
to amazing. I had no idea.
Honest to God, it's ridiculous.
Oh, that's so good.
And Mary will kill me, but Mary's 10 years older than me, by the way, and great, fabulous set of games, fabulous actress, fabulous producer, fabulous director, an amazing writer. But I went to the War Memorial for the unknown soldier, and honest to God, I was stopped 5 times. Hi, Mary. Hi, Mary Walsh. Hi, Mary Walsh. I said, I'm not Mary Walsh. I'm Mary Sexton, and I'm 10 years younger.
I always get Sharon Osbourne. Honestly, I have been mistaken for Sharon Osbourne. Yeah. I was honestly coming back from the States one time.
But you look cuter.
Oh, I was coming back from the States one time, going through the customs, and I'm up next, and I see about 8 of them come around, and I went, oh my gosh, I've got like $100 worth of shoes. I'm going to be busted. They're taking out the rubber glove. And I get up there and I give them my passport and they look at it and they all go, and the one guy goes, okay. And I went, is there something wrong? He said, no, we thought you were Sharon Osbourne.
Wow.
Really?
Oh, what was her name on, not The Edge of Night, Days of Our Lives, Scorpio, and the woman who was played that role, Phoebe, or anyway, I used to be Anna Devane. Everyone used to, when I was younger, they would say, Anna Devane, you look like Anna Devane.
Right? If you grew up in the 80s, Young and the Restless and Days of Our Lives, right? Both of those on television.
Young and the Breastless, I like to call
Young
it.
and the Breathless.
Instead of babysitters. Right? The TV's
Edge
there.
of Night, the stories.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother would watch the stories.
Oh, it's so good.
Another world. My mother lived. You couldn't phone. If you phone my mother when another world is on, she won't answer.
Oh, Jesus, when Mac and Rachel came to town,
Oh, my
the
God.
place, it was shut down.
I don't think Tina Turner got the same.
Oh, no.
The same.
No.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. They were down at a car show, remember, at Old Memorial Stadium? And I was with another station then in the media, and it was like bringing in royalty. There was women everywhere.
And Mac went down to Friends and had a few dances with
I know.
Tommy.
I know.
But by the way, Tommy would be 67 today.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, happy for the 67 there. Hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have such a crush on Mary Sexton when we were young.
Well, it's just for me. It's the just images of growing up and over the years, right?
Yeah.
You just see Tommy Sexton.
Yeah, Margaret de Mental. Remember Margaret de Mental? That was the funniest skit. You know what? I watch those skits now. You can sometimes get them on YouTube and that, and they're just as funny.
Well, they're timeless.
Yeah, the stuff holds
you
up.
You should watch. Did I send you that Tommy a Family Portrait? I must send it to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then you look at that, right? You talk about still holds up today, right? Still really funny. And again, we're talking about how great everything is now.
Yeah.
But what's the difference then between the massive amounts of provincial talent from back then compared to now? How are things different in the scene? Because there was almost like a rawness I found from looking back. But I was born in 1980, right? I was not an adult for this. So this is just me as I grew up revisiting what my folks watched and what everyone was watching in that time.
Well, I think there was a definite rawness to it, and there was.
And I mean in the best possible way, right?
Yeah, but it was, and they were writing stories against church and state, and they were using humor to actually, hit home a lot of heavy ideas. I think because of Codco, I think an awful lot of, growth was sprung. Like you look at Mark Critch, you look at Rick Mercer, you look at Alan Hocko, you look at Alan Doyle. I think that people, we were proud of what they were accomplishing, although, people were even in this station, they basically produced Codco out of Nova Scotia. Because they were talking about Mount Cashel, they were talking about church, and the Catholic Boys Club wasn't having that happen here in our town. So they mostly were produced out of Nova Scotia, and they'd come back here and do some location work. But I think that the talent, because they've had those people be their heroes or their people that they, reflect on, I think that they've, they got their chutzpah. I think that, people, younger crowd, even the comedians that are coming up in through like Luke and Nick and all those guys, they're actually, they're proud of what they're performing and what they're doing.
Yeah, you can see how things, success builds on success, on success, and inspires one generation, which can inspire another. And the more we have, the more there is to look and say, hey, anything's possible for this.
Well, there was a time on CBC, Alan Hocko had Republic of Doyle on, Mary Walsh had This Hour's 22 Minutes on, Johnny Harris had Still Standing. Rick, it was just...
There's a lot.
There was a lot, and now, we're prolific. And we're infectious. People really want to be around us, as they used to say years ago. You got to have a little Newfoundlander. If you didn't, then you'd be really, really, really rotted.
Absolutely. And I tell you this, self-esteem of Newfoundlanders and how natural performers we all are. I can't tell you the amount of messages I got on Facebook, phone calls, people stopping me on the street going, Can I have a role in the show? Can I pick anything for me? Can I don't know. We're going to need a lot of nuns and priests. I don't know how many, but I don't know. But I can't believe how many people come up and I go, I didn't even know you act. No, I want to be in the show. Like I know I can do it. I can just not the lead role, but I'd be in the background. It's like I don't know. I don't know how this works. I can't tell you, but I can't.
That's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
How different is it then for this experience compared to like book 1, 2, 3, 4, like the book publishing and out there and that experience compared to this type of news coming out of something being optioned, right? Of your series being optioned.
Yeah, it's when the first one came out, when Wormwood came out, it was actually nominated as one of the top 5 crime thrillers in Canada at that time it came out. So that kind of blew my mind for a first book.
Yeah,
and
not bad.
But it got a lot of readers, and then The Reckoning is the conclusion to it. So that got a lot of really loyal readers. And then when I introduced McNaughton, then Vanished in the third book of Murdered and Missing Women, that hit with a whole new audience because that was a big topic across Canada at the time. And then to go into Trafficked, which is, human trafficking. And people would say, well, there's no human trafficking in Newfoundland. And I'm like, really? Go into a hotel and talk to a clerk.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how you could go on Craigslist in St. John's and have a woman to your hotel room quicker than a pizza. So, it's human trafficking absolutely happens here. And happens all across Canada. I mean, Halifax is the hub of human trafficking for Canada. Yeah. So that'll tell you it is here and it's here to stay, and it's only getting worse. It's absolute getting worse. And so, each book deals with an issue, and I try to keep it as real as I can and use real statistics and everything in the book. But yeah, I mean, I think because of the topics, and if you look at TV, everything people watch is crime shows. It's all crime shows. I mean,
I've noticed there's a crime show or two out there.
Yeah. And in Newfoundland, we got a lot of cop procedural shows.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because I base my books like real investigations. I don't start out with a skeleton of a book. I'll start with the first chapter with the murder, and then I'll investigate it like a real police investigation. And people don't often see that behind the scenes because I've read crime thrillers and went, no, that's not how the police would do that. That's wrong. That wouldn't happen, and that's not the law in Canada. And it's kind of like, now I don't like the book because it's not real.
Yeah, it gets annoying, right?
They didn't do the research, so you're getting it run as a real police investigation is run, and people find that interesting and engaging. And because you never really know who did it until the last chapter, you can guess all you want, but you're going to go on a whole... Because my books are not just about the whodunit. Mine are about a journey. When you read my book, you're going to learn something you didn't know before. Like, you're going to learn about human trafficking here in Newfoundland. And I had a corrections officer say to me, look, I read that book and it changed the way that I work, because when these women come in, I never think to ask, hey, do you have your passport? Where's your passport? Who's holding it? Have you talked to your mother lately? Yeah. Where are you from? Would you like to use my phone? Would you like to phone? And so she said, I look at these women, before I used to think, well, they chose the life, they're in it. But did they really? Yeah. Women don't choose sex work. They know what little girl grows up saying, gosh, I hope I'm a sex worker when I'm older. You're there because of abuse issues, because of trauma in your life. You're there because of poverty. You're there because you're being forced. When you see these young girls coming in and they have, Baltic accents, and they don't have their passport, then instead of driving by these girls on the bottom of Longs Hill thinking, oh, they chose that. Think about, are they forced to be there? Is there a guy sitting in a car watching them to make sure they stay there?
And having some empathy for people, regardless, right? Like every single person.
And I think that we're a little
oblivious
oblivious
45
too.
seconds, but
yeah, we're a little oblivious, like we sort of live in our own worlds. And I think that, like Helen was saying, that she's opened up this world, so you sort of go,
yeah,
right?
That builds empathy, right? With the correctional officer, that's building empathy. Like, that's someone looking at it, then giving an extra thought to the human being, to the people in front of them. We're just about out of time. Tell us about where folks can. The launch is this week, right?
So the launch is this week at Chapters for We Will Meet Again, and that's Saturday from 1 to 3, and then I'm going to be at Coles in the Avila Mall on Sunday from 2 to 3:30. And it's a fabulous book. It's a testament to the strength of women in Newfoundland.
Excellent. And 10 seconds, Mary Sexton. Anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No, I think we're good. I got a cough.
I go to you just as you're coughing. You're like, why? Mary Sexton, thank you so much. Helen Escott, thank you both for this today. That is it for today's show. If you've got thoughts for us, the signal at cbc.ca. Coming up tomorrow, a different show again. It's a show on families, on the cost of living, and the struggle to afford it. You'll hear from some moms across the province about their realities as they plan their day-to-day. That's tomorrow. Don't miss it.